Tonight on Primetime, UK police say 2 men were injured after a suspect allegedly singled out Jewish pedestrians on a busy North London street before being arrested. At the scene, the attack is the latest in a string of incidents that have left Britain's Jewish communities on edge. A community shaken and wider fears growing. Good evening. A knife attack in North London is again raising concerns over community safety and extremist violence in Britain. Jewish residents in Golders Green are gathering in solidarity after police launched a terror investigation into the latest incident targeting members of the community.
Members of London's Jewish community have gathered in Golders Green following a stabbing attack that police are treating as a terrorist incident. 2 men, one in his 70s and another in his 30s, were injured after a suspect reportedly targeted Jewish individuals on a local high street. Both victims are now in a stable condition in hospital. Police arrested a 45-year-old man at the scene after using a taser. Officers say some were also assaulted during the incident. The attack is the latest in a series of anti-Semitic incidents in the UK, heightening concern among local communities.
We've been warning about this exact scenario for months now. We've been saying that shouting "globalize the Intifada" means slaughter of Jews on England, on Britain Street, and that's exactly what we saw today on the high street in Golders Green.
All of us here, we're all terrified. This is happening so often now. People going around there about their normal lives, and this horror happens. It's happening to Jews all over the place, and we're terrified.
This is leading to the rise of extremism. It's glorifying extremism. It's bringing these extremists out onto our streets and into the Jewish neighborhood. And it's creating so much fear and so much terrorism.
The stabbing follows a string of recent attacks targeting Jewish communities, including arson incidents in London and a fatal attack near a synagogue in Manchester last year.
Well, joining me now in the studio is Katie Wilson, who's been following the developments in North London and the police response to this attack. Katie, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us. The shocking incident. What do we know about what happened? What are the police saying about how events unfolded?
Yes, so it's all kind of coming out and it's breaking as we go, really. But if we rewind back to 11 a.m. UK time yesterday, police officers responded to reports of a stabbing on Highfield Avenue, which runs off Golders Green Road. Now, as you and me know, Golders Green is a suburb in North London, and it's known as a hub for the Jewish community. So around half of the residents there are Jewish. And CCTV captured the suspect confront a man before chasing him down the street. And a few minutes later, more CCTV footage shows the suspect repeatedly attacking a man waiting at a bus stop. And he was seen pushing him onto the road and out of view. And as police surround the suspect, he walks towards officers before being tasered. And officers can be heard yelling, "Drop the knife," repeatedly before he falls to the ground and is overpowered. And obviously we've got police body cam footage, so we know that we know what happened. While arresting him, officers feared the suspect was carrying an explosive device and tasered him while he continued to try and attack and stab them. So he was attempting to stab police officers as well. And this is all according to the Met Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley. And after his arrest, the suspect was treated briefly in hospital and now remains in police custody. And we've obviously been hearing from eyewitnesses since the incident, and they've talked about the chaos during the attack, with one local saying that they saw people running around and it was really terrifying.
Yeah, it must have been. And we've seen pictures of the suspect, Katie, haven't we? But what do we know about the man himself?
Yes, so within hours, the government declared this as a terrorist incident, and counter-terror police are currently looking into this and investigating whether the Jewish community was deliberately targeted by this man. So we know it's a 45-year-old man that's been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after yesterday's attack, and in the last few hours, the police have named him as Issa Suleiman. He was born in Somalia and came to the UK as a child in the early 90s. So he came legally and he's now a British citizen. So the Metropolitan Police Commissioner Rowley said the suspect has a history of serious violence and mental health issues, and an address in southeast London is also being searched, and they're investigating an altercation at that address which happened earlier that day, which is believed to involve the same suspect.
So he was known, Katie, to the authorities?
He was. So he was known to the Prevent programme, and that is a key part of the UK's counter-terrorism strategy. And that's about placing a legal duty on public bodies to identify people who may have turned to extremism. So he was referred to this programme. It's essentially, it should be a safeguarding programme which is meant to stop individuals becoming terrorists, maybe through theological support, mental health support, or online safety training. And we know he was referred. We don't know much more, and the Met says given that the investigation is ongoing, we'll not be providing further information. So that'll probably come out with time. But Keir Starmer has been speaking in the past hour. He made a statement and he was actually asked about the effectiveness of Prevent. And obviously you remember the Southport stabbings as well.
Of course,
So that was another individual that was known to Prevent. So questions are being asked here about whether it works and whether it is effective. And Starmer says that Prevent was reviewed after those attacks in Southport, but says the government is open to learning any further lessons in terms of how this programme can be improved.
Oh, interesting. Bit of a politician's answer, but yeah, understandably very sensitive situation. What do we know about the victims, the condition of the people who've been injured?
Yes, so there were two Jewish men that were stabbed in the attack, and they've been named as Shlomo Rond and Moshe Shine. And they were treated at the scene and they're now in a stable condition in hospital. And actually Shlomo, that's the 34-year-old victim of the stabbing, he's been speaking to the BBC and he sounds quite upbeat actually from what we've been hearing. He says, it was a very big miracle that happened to me. I feel like God's given me back my life. I'm really happy that it was only these injuries and that it wasn't any worse. He said, I would have been happier if nothing happened, but in this situation, I'm happy I survived. I'm happy I can talk. He says his lungs need to recover and he's obviously got a stab wound to his chest and his oxygen levels has been reduced, but he's hoping he'll be better soon, and his family and friends are hoping that he'll be discharged within the next few days and in time for Shabbat, which is the Jewish day of rest from Friday to Saturday. And he did recount Wednesday's attack. It sounds like he's been conscious for most of this. So his mum went to see him yesterday and she said he was conscious the whole time. And he says he was simply walking down the street and an attacker came towards him and just stabbed him in the chest. He says, I managed to jump back, thank God. And he was also asked whether enough was being done to deal with anti-Semitism in the UK. And he says, definitely not. Maybe from now on, the government will pull their socks up and begin dealing with this problem properly. And he goes on and says that this can no longer be ignored by the government.
And Katie, we've heard it a little bit in the report there from some of the residents. What are we hearing from community leaders, people in the area?
Yes, so there's a real air of anger and frustration because this is the second attack in the space of a few weeks that has taken place in Golders Green. And a Jewish man from the area spoke to the BBC and said the UK government is not hospitable for the Jewish community. They say they are, but they do nothing. I don't feel safe walking down Golders Green High Street where I've lived for years. This country is finished for Jews. People will leave to go to Israel. So that's the sentiment there among the Jewish community, and residents that were descendants of Holocaust survivors were talking about the fact that generations ago this felt like a safe haven, a safe place. People escaped to London and now it feels like a hostile place. And there were residents with family in Israel that were saying that their Israeli family was calling to see if they were okay, which doesn't compute in our minds when we think that the UK should be safer than the Middle East and Israel that's involved in a war. So yeah, as I say, it comes after a series of incidents in recent months. Chief Rabbi Sir Ephraim Mervis, who represents Britain's largest Jewish community, he said the attacks show that if you're visibly Jewish, you're not safe. And there is growing pressure on the government to tackle anti-Semitism in the UK. The government's independent reviewer of terrorism and state threats legislation said that attacks on Jewish people in the UK have now become the biggest national security emergency since 2017. As we saw earlier in that clip, the Prime Minister visited the scene of the stabbing today and he was heckled by protesters. Protesters shouted traitor at him as the car drove in, and they say the government haven't been doing enough to protect the Jewish community. And those who gathered said they were scared to be Jewish in the UK and more needed to be done to protect British Jews. Some said, again, we've been hearing this from a lot of residents, that they're considering leaving the country due to the rising anti-Semitism. And Starmer was actually asked about this at the statement he just gave at the press conference, and he was asked about being heckled, and he says he absolutely understands the high level of anxiety and concern. He called an emergency COBRA meeting, that's a security meeting, and pulled together criminal justice agencies so that justice is swiftly dealt. And he also adds that he'll look at further measures that can be taken on protesting in relation to chants, banners, and the repeated nature of these protests. So these are a reference to behaviours at pro-Palestinian marches, and he says, of course, the UK protects freedom of speech, but if you're marching with people wearing pictures of paragliders without calling it out, you're venerating the murders of Jews. And for context, some Hamas militants used paragliders to enter Israel during the 7th of October attacks. And he adds, if you're standing alongside people saying globalise the Antifada, you're calling for terrorism against Jews. So he says, that should be getting stricter. People who use that phrase should be prosecuted. And he says it's left a minority scared, intimidated, and wondering if they belong.
And the Jewish community, Katie, as you said, clearly believe that the government ought to be doing more, that Keir Starmer ought to be taking more action. Do you think there's an expectation that the government will do more than they've said already?
So we have been hearing from Starmer after this, and I think there's a lot we can take from that statement there in the past hour. So he said Britain's Jewish community has suffered yet another vile terrorist attack, and 2 men were stabbed because they were Jews, and the PM has shared his determination to act, because he said the truth is this attack is not a one-off and there's been a series of attacks. And he said the increase in anti-Semitic attacks mean Jewish people are scared to show who they are, scared to go to the synagogue or to university as a Jew, or send their children to school or tell colleagues that they're Jewish. He says nobody should live like that in Britain, but Jews do. And he is bringing some concrete policies by the looks of things. So he says the government will strengthen the visible police presence in communities. So I live very close to a Jewish community in Gateshead, and often they have their own police, like a designated security police. And you do see when there's incidents in Israel that police presence does increase. Yes. So that should become more visible, and they'll increase investment in Jewish security services, introduce stronger powers to shut down charities that promote anti-Semitic extremism. He says the government will also prevent hate preachers from entering the country and bar them from university campuses, the UK streets and communities. He says the government will also work with the justice system to speed up sentencing on anti-Semitic attacks. And Buckingham Palace also said the King was deeply concerned about the impact on the Jewish community. And we have had some international reaction to this. So Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has actually called on the British government to do more to protect Jews. And his statement references weakness from the UK government in the face of one anti-Semitic attack after another. So it'll be interesting to see what comes about. The government's announced an extra £25 million in funding for those increased police patrols and security in Jewish communities. So it'll be interesting to see whether that translates into concrete changes, and again, what's going to happen with that Prevent programme as well.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. Katie, as always, thank you very much for your analysis. Thank you. Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the top business news stories shaping the day with Andy Mioch. Don't go away.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Gökdeniz atışı hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. AnewZ is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on AnewZ.
Welcome out, you're watching Primetime now. Andy Mioch is with us, bringing us the very latest business news stories. Andy, what have you got on your agenda tonight?
Well, Guy, following reports that the U.S. military would brief the president on possible plans of action against Iran, oil prices hit a wartime high. Japan signaled it might intervene to prop up its currency, and there's also some reports on growth outlooks and earnings across industries. So let's have a look. First up, Brent crude prices jumped to a fresh 4-year high on concerns that the U.S.-Iran war could worsen and lead to a protracted Middle East oil supply disruption that could hurt global economic growth. Oil prices retreated from their peaks but remained above $110 per barrel.
Brent crude dropped back to $113 a barrel on Thursday, having surged as high as $126 overnight. The surge came due to concerns the US-Iran war could further escalate and disrupt global oil supply. The conflict's already led to what the International Energy Agency called the world's biggest oil disruption ever. That's due to the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a key passage through which around a fifth of the world's oil and LNG transits. The market moved higher after Axios reported US President Donald Trump is expected to receive a briefing on plans for a series of military strikes on Iran. That's with hopes Tehran will return to negotiations, which are deadlocked over its nuclear program. Tehran is demanding, in return, some control over the Strait of Hormuz and reparations for damage from the war. The price of Brent has doubled since the US-Israeli attack on Iran began on February 28th, while US benchmark West Texas Intermediate crude is up around 90%. Trump called a ceasefire in the war earlier this month, but also imposed a US blockade on Iranian ports. There are signs the conflict and resulting energy supply disruptions are set to continue for longer. The White House said Trump spoke Wednesday with oil companies about how to deal with the impact of a possible months-long US blockade.
Japanese yen spiked following a warning from Finance Minister Satsuki Katayama that the timing to take, quote, decisive action in the market was nearing. This was Katayama's strongest signal yet of potential currency intervention to prop up the sagging yen.
Japan's yen surged 3%, the most in a day in over 3 years on Thursday, following stark warnings from Tokyo officials that intervention to prop up the currency could be imminent. The dollar was trading at 155.9 yen by 12:50 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, as the Japanese currency strengthened sharply. The US currency was on track for its biggest one-day drop since December 2022, when it fell 3.8% in a day. Japanese Finance Minister Satsuki Katayama said earlier on Thursday that the timing to take decisive action in the market was nearing, in her strongest signal yet of potential currency intervention to prop up the yen. Katayama declined to comment when asked whether the action could include solo or joint currency intervention with the US to stem the yen's declines.
French oil and gas giant Total Energies raised its dividend by almost 6% and doubled its share buybacks. The announcement drew war profiteering criticisms from climate groups as French politicians are pressing for a super tax on the oil majors' windfall profits to aid consumers hit by higher prices linked to the Iran war.
Total Energies angered French politicians on Wednesday as it raised its dividend and doubled its share buyback. That's while some lawmakers are pushing for a super tax on the oil majors' windfall profits in a bid to help consumers hit by higher prices during the Iran war. Total beat expectations with adjusted net income of $5.4 billion. It's a jump of almost a third from a year ago, boosted by strong trading. The conflict in Iran has caused unprecedented disruption of energy markets. It's forced Total to shut in 15% of its upstream output and pushed up global energy prices. Total is one of the oil majors and oil-producing countries to see a windfall. On Wednesday, France's Socialist Party announced a proposal to tax these companies' windfall profits in times of crisis, and activists staged a protest outside a Total fuel station, denouncing what they called the energy group's wartime profits. The French energy company will buy back $1.5 billion in shares in the second quarter. It's a turnaround after it slowed purchases and announced a cost savings program in late 2025 on the expectation low oil prices would fall further. Total stock has gained over 40% year to date.
In aviation news, Air France-KLM has cut its capacity growth forecasts for this year as the Iran war drives up its fuel costs by billions of dollars. The French-Dutch airline said it now expects to expand capacity by 2 to 4% this year, down from its earlier forecast of 3 to 5%.
Air France-KLM expects its fuel bill to increase by $2.4 billion this year because of the energy market disruption caused by the Iran war, it said on Thursday, as it downgraded its capacity outlook. As jet fuel makes up more than a third of most airlines' costs, European airlines have revised their outlooks following the onset of the Middle Eastern conflict at the end of February. The jet fuel hedges they had taken out against price rises are increasingly unable to shelter them given the scale of spikes. Air France-KLM said in a statement they expect the fuel price increases to weigh on the coming quarters. The company said its total fuel was expected to be $9.3 billion for the year, and of that, $1.1 billion would be for the second quarter. Robust bookings before the Iran war began meant the company reported a smaller first quarter loss than analysts expected. However, as the conflict drags on, it said it planned smaller increases to its long-haul capacity as people postpone booking travel over concerns of the financial risk of long-haul trips.
Over to the auto industry, Volkswagen reported an unexpected drop in first quarter operating profit, prompting the Wolfsburg-based company to announce it must fundamentally overhaul its business at a challenging time for the industry.
Volkswagen must fundamentally overhaul its business as tariffs, geopolitical shocks and weak car demand batter the industry, the automaker said on Thursday, with a sharp first quarter profit drop underscoring the urgency. Volkswagen reported an unexpected 14% fall in first quarter operating profit to €2.5 billion. The group, which includes Porsche and Audi, has been hit by steep US tariffs expected to cost about €4 billion a year and is battling to arrest sliding sales in China and the US. Around 50,000 jobs are already to be cut across the group in Germany by 2030. The Wolfsburg-based company posted quarterly revenue of €75.7 billion, down 2.5% and below analyst estimate for €77.6 billion. That translated into an operating margin of 3.3%. The group confirmed its full-year guidance, but warned that it does not factor in a potential escalation in the Middle East conflict, which could hit demand and drive up raw material costs globally.
And finally, in chip-making news, Samsung reported record quarterly profit, driven by a 49-fold jump in chip income. The company said it expects a severe supply shortage to deepen next year as clients spend on AI. driving up prices of its memory chips.
Samsung reported record quarterly profit on Thursday, driven by a 49-fold jump in chip income. The South Korean tech giant said January to March operating profit in its chip division reached a record $36.1 billion. It was massively up from a year before and represented 94% of the quarter's total. Overall revenue rose 69% on the year to $90.4 billion. It marks a positive step for the firm, which wants to close the gap with rival SK Hynix in supplying high-bandwidth memory chips to NVIDIA. SK Hynix last week reported record quarterly profit following a 5-fold jump in earnings. The chip makers have seen a boom in the construction of AI data centers. It's led firms to allocate production capacity to advanced chips NVIDIA uses in its so-called AI accelerators. Chip makers have struggled to meet demand, while the move also squeezes the supply of conventional semiconductors. Samsung said Thursday that its supply falls far short of customer demand, and it believes the supply-to-demand gap for 2027 is due to widen even further than this year.
And that's a wrap on the business brief for tonight. Back to you, Guy.
Great stuff, Andy. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the growing questions over political lobbying influence and the battle to shape narratives in Europe. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Gökdeniz atışı hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
A warm welcome back wherever you're watching Primetime. Now, fresh allegations are putting political lobbying in Europe under the spotlight. Azerbaijani outlet Minval Politika says it has obtained video recordings involving former ICC prosecutor Luis Marino Ocampo, allegedly discussing political influence and pressure campaigns. Here's more.
European institutions are facing fresh allegations of political influence and lobbying linked to a high-profile corruption and interference claim. Azerbaijani outlet Minval Politika reports that it has obtained video material involving former International Criminal Court prosecutor Luis Moreno Ocampo and his son Thomas. According to the publication, the recordings allegedly show discussions about influencing European decision-making, coordinating political pressure, and targeting Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan.
Si yo tengo una compañía que estas cosas reducimos costos, porque tenemos, por ejemplo, yo hoy tengo contratado un tipo muy piola que fue miembro del Parlamento Europeo, fue el asesor legal de
Borrell.
El comisionado
Borrell, ¿no?
De Borrell. Entonces, y ese tipo me está operando el Parlamento Europeo. Yo desde el Parlamento Europeo puedo cuestionar y dirigirle preguntas y apretar a la comisionada von der Leyen y ajustar la política europea. Y también, es más, ahora me está descubriendo una cosa que yo no conocía, nuevísima, que es un juicio ante un tribunal de justicia europeo para obligar a la Comisión a que cancele contratos con Azerbaiyán. Pues la cláusula que exige que Azerbaiyán cumpla con los derechos humanos, que no la está cumpliendo. Entonces, estoy abriendo ahí un espacio nuevo para mí, que es... Entonces, ¿por qué es importante? La Unión Europea es importante ahora porque como está Trump ya abriendo camino, nos metemos ahí en un camino ya trabajado y le metemos más presión y yo lo hago eso en combinación con los armenios que hacen el lobby en Estados Unidos. Entonces nos metemos ahí y empujamos una cosa que está más factible, ¿no? Que tengo que abrir la pared. La puerta abierta, empujemos la puerta.
No, nosotros fue orquestar gente, hacerles saber, miren, esto está pasando, como hacerles entender qué era lo que pasaba. Al día de hoy, por ejemplo, hoy hubo una reunión, con activistas, con empresarios, con gente que está trabajando el caso, toda la situación que involucra a los armenios, ¿no? A los armenios de... Y una que es una joven que dirige la campaña de redes sociales, porque en Armenia hay un quilombo bárbaro ahora. Hay un quilombo de que peleas internas por elecciones. No, hay que... nosotros tenemos que lograr que remuevan a Pashinyan, al primer ministro. Tenemos que sacarlo.
These recordings reveal that Ocampo has acted as a paid lobbyist connected to Armenian political interests, and that he has used networks within European institutions to shape policy discussions, including positions affecting Azerbaijan. It also alleges coordination with lobbying groups in the United States, and suggests that human rights narratives are being used as a political tool. The article describes these activities as potential interference in regional political processes and calls for investigations by European and Belgian authorities into possible corruption or undue influence within EU institutions. At the same time, the authenticity of the materials and the broader context of the allegations remain unverified by independent sources. European institutions have not publicly responded to these claims so far.
Well, joining me now is Anastasia Lavrina, host of Inside Politics and, of course, Frontline. Anastasia, good to see you. Who is this man, Ocampo, and why does his involvement in a story like this carry so much political weight?
Well, there is indeed too much noise around his name, and there are indeed some facts which spring that. Luis Moreno Ocampo, he played a role during the Argentina's democratic transitions. That's why since the beginning he made his name, which helped me, and which helped him actually to use his own name during the time while he was the first chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Courts from 2003 until 2012. And during that period of time, he became well known in the political circles, in the business circles, and also in the criminal circles. He had contacts with many people around the world, but it may seem that he tried to position himself as a very strict person within this very important institution promoting human rights, working with different policymakers, former policymakers, but after some period of time, after investigations, it became known that he also has some contacts with criminals. Specifically, I would like to mention the case in Libya, where after the investigations it was detected that he supported one representative of the militia group who had close ties with Gaddafi and Gaddafi's son. But it's not only about this, but he helped that person to hide his own, let's say, criminal past and the cases where he was involved in, receiving indeed a very good money for that period of time, providing the information to the people who were not supposed to have that kind of information. And after the investigation, of course, the people started to ask for more information about this person, and absolutely it was detected that he also were connected with a businessman and the people supporting them with the offshore business, from where he could also receive a good amount of money. Mentioning the numbers, even I could find it from the open sources that he was paid around $1 million per year for 3 years and approximately $5,000 per day.
Wow.
So he opened his own company, and having his name, which he promoted during the period of time taking that position in the International Criminal Court, he of course were surrounded by high-level policymakers who tried to use his name to promote their own interests. Let's say the people from the opposition, the people who wanted to have any kind of policy-making decisions, they asked him to publish any kind of documents or the books on behalf of his own name as it's the right position to be presented. But indeed, after the investigation, it was detected that most of the information was actually fabricated, and there was no any legal background. Among the people who indeed supported him, it's many representatives of the Armenian lobby in many countries, including a well-known figure, Ruben Vardanyan. It's a former Russian businessman. And from the open sources, I also could watch the video, the interview, where the presenter, the host, is asking about his contacts, Luis Moreno Ocampo's contacts with Armenian diaspora, and where he's saying that Armenian diaspora, I will quote it, is a unique, and for him it's a great honor and pleasure to work with Armenian diaspora. And from the video, which was presented by Meanwhile Politica, it's also it's also visible that he is presenting his contacts with the Armenian diaspora and lobby groups in the United States. And all of this happening during the period of time when we can see the intensification of the contacts in between of Azerbaijan, European Union, also Azerbaijan and the United States. So we can also contact, we can also make the correlation in between what's happening in the region and the growing interest on behalf of the European Union towards the South Caucasus, and the willingness of some representatives of the Armenian diaspora to stop, to interrupt this peace-building process in between of Armenia and Azerbaijan. Connection with Vardanyan. Previously, he had a good context with former presidents of Armenia who were absolutely against any kind of talks and peace agreement to be signed with Azerbaijan. Then now he's also trying to position himself as a voice of those policymakers and Armenian diaspora who are willing to present the position and to support any kind of campaign, let's say the campaign around Ruben Vardanyan. Again, officially and openly, he made several statements in support of this criminal person who is now in Azerbaijani prison, and there is indeed number of issues he was doing while he was illegally staying in Karabakh. He is a self-declared policymaker, and we could see how Luis Moreno Ocampo tried to support him from any possible means, from the high tribunes, social media, and etc. And here in this video, he's also saying that I have a company and I am ready to promote the interest of those who agree to pay good money, meaning that he's using his own name. he is using his former position and he is selling his, let's say, his open sources and his company for those who are ready to pay to affect the peace building process in between of Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Yeah, and I think that a casual glance at the video, perhaps from some viewers, Anastasia, you could be forgiven for thinking, oh, well, look, this happens a lot. It's an influential person. They've been caught in a situation where they're bragging, they're talking up their credentials in order to solicit some kind of consultancy fee. I mean, it happens quite often. It's embarrassing, but not really anything too serious. But actually, that's not what we saw here, is it? Because there are much more serious elements to this. The attempt to deliberately and purposefully influence Europe's position on Baku, for example.
Absolutely, and he also mentions the names. He named the people, Mr. Borrell, who, from his words, is a, let's say, close person to him and who helps him to promote his own interests. He also referred to the European Commission, bringing the case from which we can expect, from his words, that there could be any, let's say, problems in relations between the European Commission and Azerbaijan. So he's bringing the human rights and the international law, and he tries to hide the corruption under democratic principles, under the principles of democracy. He's trying to speak about human rights, again, about the democratic issues, about human rights violations in a number of countries, but it means that he tries to use it in order to hide its own corruptional schemes. As in the beginning, he is saying that I have a company and I'm ready to get the money and promote the interest of those who will be fighting against the peace building principles in the region. Yes. Meaning that he himself is trying to hide what he is doing, and it's him himself who is violating the international laws, the democratic principles, the human rights violations, and also the European value. We see now from his statement, he is mentioning that there's a number of people in the European institutions who will be working with him against Azerbaijan. Remember, we had a similar campaign before COP29 when Azerbaijan was positioned as a country with a good amount of fossil fuels. So how Azerbaijan can organize an event like COP29 if these countries well known with its own amount of gas and oil. We had such kind of statements on behalf of the Armenian lobby, Armenian diaspora, and the policymakers who have a good connections with the Armenian diaspora in between all those period of times, like last 3 or 4 months before COP29. And now, as I mentioned before, when there is a real chance for two sides, Azerbaijan and European Union, to have a stable, good relations based on new realities in the region. The new agreement, two sides are continuing negotiating on that. The negotiation process started in 2017. Then imagine how many years passed. And now we have a new round of talks expecting that new agreement to be signed in between the European Union and Azerbaijan, also having more updated information about energy cooperation, about the peace in the region of the South Caucasus, restore territorial integrity and sovereignty of Azerbaijan. And within this period of time, we can see that there is a Luis Moreno Ocampo who is appear on the stage and stating that I will use my own sources and my own people. By the way, mentioning that Mr. Borrell is someone who will follow all of my requests, meaning that he tries to devaluate the values of the European Union institutions. Imagine the European Union, how many countries are there, how many representatives, how many institutions. I guess he preferred to appellate the situation in the European Parliament with one reason, because there is over 700 members of European Parliament. And I do remember that in 2023, I had my own investigation about the influence of the Armenian diaspora and Armenian lobby group in the European Parliament. That time, I mentioned several names, the policymakers, specifically representatives of the Armenian diaspora, who is playing their own game, paying a huge amount of money for the members of European Parliament and promoting their own interest against Azerbaijan, bringing the table different kind of resolutions, appealing by different resolutions and human rights violation cases and etc., trying to position Azerbaijan as not a right partner for the European Union. Therefore, now I guess we also have to expect that all of these issues are connected with the growing role of Azerbaijan and the fact that Azerbaijan indeed managed to have stable and good and predictable relations with a number of countries. Just recently, President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Gabala, Azerbaijan. Yes. So the Ukrainian leader is coming here and presenting Azerbaijan as a possible platform for a meeting between Russia and Ukraine. Imagine the status Azerbaijan has on the global arena. Then after Prime Minister of the Czech Republic is coming here, the President of Latvia, if I'm not mistaken, be here just before. So Azerbaijan is also trying to promote the bilateral relations with each and every country in the European Union, and positioning itself as a stable partner for European Union from the energy perspective in the region. Absolutely, we have to expect that the people like Luis Moreno Campo and those who are in the circle of Ruben Vardanyan or the Armenian-American Council, ANCA, which is also very well known for its Azerbaijani messages, rhetoric, and publications. All of these institutions will try to use this situation for their own purposes. And the upcoming elections in Armenia, they also tried not to allow Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan to be re-elected, to have a strong position in Armenia, so they can bring their own person who will not be willing to have a stable and peaceful relations with Azerbaijan.
A campo like Vardanyan, clearly it's very clear what they're up to. Campo made it very clear in the video that we saw in his own words. But they're not acting alone, are they? They can't be acting entirely alone. What about those European institutions? Do you think they also have questions to answer?
Absolutely. They should have a clear investigation after this video became available for so many people, because they are, I still believe, people and the policymakers in the European institutions who are willing to have a stable, predictable and constructive relations with Azerbaijan. But we cannot ignore the fact that they are still representative of the Armenian diaspora and the Armenian lobby, who do not want to see this constructive and the final peace agreement, comprehensive peace agreement, to be signed between Baku and Yerevan. From this perspective, I do believe that the representatives of a number of European institutions should have at least a clear and detailed investigations why it's happening, to make sure that the people who are now beyond the border of the European politics, like Mr. Borrell, he is not a, let's say, strong figure taking into account his current position. He already not a representative of a European institution. Therefore, these people will be used by the Luis Moreno Campo or the circles. We also, AnewZ, made a very nice investigations mentioning a number of people in the European politics, and not only in Europe but also in the United Kingdom or in the United States of America, those who are willing to destabilize the situation. Remember, in the Parliament of the United Kingdom, there were also a number of session meetings held in support of the so-called Nagorno-Karabakh, as they prefer to state it. Until now, the violation, so-called violation of human rights and etc., they were trying to, they created the petition and asked people to join it. It's happened 2 or 3 months before about so-called destruction of the Armenian cultural heritage in the Karabakh, but they don't want to investigate. They don't want to come here and see what's indeed happened during the period of occupation of Azerbaijani lands by Armenia within almost 30 years, when a number of mosques, churches and other cultural heritage were absolutely destroyed. We do have all of these photos, but unfortunately they do not want to refer to the documents, to these photos, to promote them, to investigate the real cases. They prefer to ignore this side of Azerbaijan, meaning that they are not following the principles of the international law and human rights. They are trying just to promote their own position. The same person, Luis Moreno Campo, in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, published so-called conclusion on so-called genocide in Karabakh. He was referring to the action which took place on the Lachian Road, eco-activists there, and then that special operation Azerbaijan had within just one day, which helped to restore the sovereignty in the country. And Luis Moreno Ocampo, in order to have such kind of concept, he could come to the region himself to investigate what is happening. Without the clear investigation on the ground, he cannot publish any proven document or source to be distributed, meaning that even after that case, when it was published, the people started to ask who exactly provided the material for that, who supported that investigation, and there was no any clear answer. Meaning that those people, again, I mean the high-level officials and people with good money, paid him and used his name to promote their own interest, having that small reference, small conclusion to appeal in different international institutions without the proven facts and results.
Anastasia, it's always good to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. After the break, we'll take a closer look at whether this latest Trump-Putin call could open the door to a ceasefire in Ukraine or simply mark another pause in the long war. Don't go away.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Yaptığınız atışa hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. AnewZ is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on AnewZ.
Welcome back to Primetime. A possible pause in the war in Ukraine may be back on the table after a fresh call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. With Washington signalling urgency and Moscow floating a temporary truce around Victory Day, attention is turning to whether diplomacy can finally shift the battlefield.
US President Donald Trump says he discussed a possible Ukraine ceasefire in a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking in the Oval Office, Trump said the conversation focused mainly on Ukraine, with Iran also discussed. He said he suggested what he called a little bit of a ceasefire, adding that too many people were being killed.
I talked about Ukraine, and I talked a little bit about Iran. I talked about a few different subjects, mostly about Ukraine, and we had a very good conversation. I think we're going to come up with a solution relatively quickly, I hope.
What was he like?
I think you'd like to see a solution, I can tell you, and that's good.
Trump also said Putin offered to help on the issue of Iran's enriched uranium, but that he told the Russian leader his priority was ending the conflict in Ukraine. The Kremlin said Putin proposed a temporary pause in fighting around Russia's May 9th commemorations, marking the Soviet role in the defeat of Nazi Germany. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov said the call lasted more than an hour and a half, and that Trump responded positively to the proposal. He also said Trump believed a deal to end the Ukraine conflict was close. Moscow announced a similar 3-day truce last year, but it was not agreed with Kyiv.
Well, joining us now from Torquay in the UK is the geopolitical analyst Ines Burrell to break this down for us. Ines, great to see you there. Thanks for joining us on Primetime. Let's start with the timing. Why now, do you think? Could this be anything to do with King Charles III's visit?
Well, it's quite frankly that time of the year. 9th of May is coming. That's the only reason this conversation happened, and that was basically the main subject that was discussed. Putin is quite literally terrified that his parade is going to be rained on by Ukrainian drones and possibly missiles. He really can't ensure the safety of anybody on that parade, and that would be a huge humiliation to him. Last year, he had live hostages there with him. He had Xi Jinping, he had Serbian president, he had Nicolas Maduro even. This year, he doesn't have any of them. Besides, they have seriously downsized their parade. There is not going to be any military equipment this year. A lot of cadets and other participants, they are not going to be there this year. It is very important to Putin to have this parade and pretend that nothing bad is happening, and anything else that might be happening, it's completely unrelated. The only thing I can say in regard to King Charles's visit, it is quite possible that Putin timed the call so that he would be the last person to speak to Trump after Charles's visit, because we all know that Trump needs retuning every so often, so the narrative needs to be the correct one for Putin. That is why that was done probably on that specific day.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. President Trump says that he floated what he called a little bit of a ceasefire. Does that sound like the start of something serious, or is it more just about sort of testing positions?
Trump has floated a lot of things, and none of them have stuck so far as we know. I honestly do not see how this is anything serious, because the move comes from Moscow, and for one reason only. They need to ensure their safety on the parade day, that's all. Trump would be very happy to get any ceasefire out of it, but it is really up to Russia, and Russia doesn't want to have a ceasefire. They only want to continue their war, or they would be happy, of course, for Ukraine to just give up. But since that's not going to happen, they're going to try to pretend that they are interested in peace when they're quite frankly not.
You mentioned the May the 9th, Victory Day. Just give us a sense of why that's so important symbolically.
Well, for most of countries, the most important day of the year for a state would be Independence Day. You see, Russia doesn't have anybody to be independent of. There are other countries celebrating independence from Russia, but Russia doesn't celebrate independence from anybody. So there used to be two very important days. So the 9th of May parade and 7th of November, when they celebrated the Communist coup day. That also had a parade on that day. Since the fall of communism, only one parade was left, and they had to celebrate it every year with great pomp. It is really very important. They're celebrating the 4 years of Second World War that they participated in, considering the fact that the earlier 2 years they were allied with Nazi Germany. So that is something that most of Russians don't even know and don't think about, but they're only celebrating part of Second World War, but it is very important to them because that's all they have.
Now, Putin also offered to help on Iran's uranium issue, didn't he? What's going on here, Ines? Is Russia trying to broaden the conversation or just increase its own leverage?
It's leverage, really, but also, really, they are trying to muscle into any situation where they can to show that they are still relevant. Because, of course, after Syria's fall, after Maduro took his new cell in New York, he doesn't have that many allies in Middle East or anywhere else except Iran. So he has to show that he can do something, that he is relevant, and that he has some power, which he doesn't, of course. Besides, Russia is an ally of Iran. Even Trump wouldn't be that stupid to give Russia Iranian uranium. That's just, you can't do that.
Ines, let's just assume that a ceasefire does happen. If it does, what do you assess to be the hardest part that comes after that? Is it going to be getting Kyiv on board, keeping both sides committed, or perhaps something else?
It all depends on what kind of ceasefire we're talking about. If we're talking about one-day ceasefire for the parade, President Zelensky already basically turned that down today. He's stated that he has to find out whether they're talking about protection of the parade or proper ceasefire that will last longer than one day. Everybody assumes it's only about the protection of parade, nothing else, because Putin hasn't displayed any interest in stopping the war. He hasn't displayed any interest in following the international law. So why would he do that now? He just has no incentive. Nobody has made him do it. Nothing bad is going to happen to him if he doesn't do it. So there's no reason for him to go into any kind of ceasefire.
Ines, we thank you for your analysis. We appreciate it very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, after the break, we'll be talking about what a possible US troop cut in Germany could mean for NATO, Ukraine, and Europe's wider security picture. Don't go away. On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. AnewZ is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on AnewZ.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Yaptığınız atışa hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
A warm welcome back wherever you're watching Primetime. President Trump has said the US is reviewing a possible reduction of US troops in Germany, adding that a decision will be made shortly. Well, in a post on social media, Trump said a final decision would be taken in the near term. The comments, which came on Wednesday, follow his earlier criticism of German Chancellor Friedrich Merz over the war in Iran, after Merz said the Iranians were humiliating the United States in talks to end the conflict. Washington is weighing possible changes to its military staffing overseas. The government is reviewing troop levels in Europe and considering deployments in the Middle East amid the tensions with Iran. Our reporter has more from Washington.
President Trump announced on Wednesday that the United States is studying the possibility of reducing the amount of U.S. soldiers that are stationed in Germany. Trump said that he will make a final determination on the future of the U.S. military presence in Germany soon. There are currently around 36,000 active duty U.S. military personnel that are stationed in Germany. This includes Army, Air Force, and Marine forces, with the Army mainly operating out of 5 main bases, making it the largest U.S. military presence in Europe and the second largest American military presence worldwide. President Trump has been increasingly critical of the NATO military alliance for not supporting the U.S. military campaign against Iran's missile and nuclear program. So he may be reducing forces in Europe because of those concerns. In the meantime, U.S. Central Command, which oversees all U.S. military operations in the Middle East, is reportedly preparing a plan for a short and powerful wave of strikes against Iran, as negotiations have become deadlocked. President Trump has not yet ordered the implementation of this plan, according to reports in Washington, but is still under consideration. Central Command is also reportedly ordering the deployment of the U.S. Army's Dark Eagle long-range hypersonic weapon system into the Middle East, which could be used to target Iranian missile launchers that have been moved beyond the 500-kilometer range of the U.S. Army's precision strike missile system. Admiral Brad Cooper, the commander of Central Command, announced that U.S. forces have successfully redirected the 42nd commercial vessel attempting to run through the ongoing U.S. blockade against Iranian shipping since that blockade came into effect. In a statement, Admiral Cooper said that there are 41 Iranian tankers with nearly 69 million barrels of oil that are currently sitting idle and unable to transport and sell their cargo due to the blockade, costing Tehran billions of dollars in lost revenue. I'm Ubi Shabander, AnewZ, Washington.
Well, joining us now is Tobias Ellwood, security and defence analyst and former UK Defence Minister. Tobias, very good indeed to have you with us. If President Trump does this, he cuts troops in Germany significantly, what are the implications for NATO?
Well, they are huge. I mean, just to place it in perspective, I think your introduction there was right on the ball there. The timing of this comment seems to have been triggered by the German Chancellor's remarks on Iran. I mean, he was saying exactly what the rest of us have been saying that this was a war of choice. It's not gone well. It's costing America in international reputation, and economically, we're feeling it around the world. I'm just back from Washington, D.C. I was there a few days. This war itself is playing out very badly indeed. It's hitting the petrol pumps, and people don't see an easy off-ramp, an easy way out. So Donald Trump likes to throw other pebbles in the pond. And so I think he's expediting something he was already planning to do. If you remember that national security strategy publication that came out late in 2025, saying that the world is no longer going to prop up the entire world, America is not going to prop up the entire world order, pushing for Europe to take primary responsibility of its own defense. So this fits into that. I just think it's been expedited because of the Chancellor's comments. And it does, as your question implies, raise big questions for the continent and for Britain and so forth as to how we look after ourselves, defend ourselves, but most critically then take on and complete the job of supporting Ukraine in its efforts to push Russia back.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, Tobias. I mean, what's really driving this? What's behind it? Is it about making Europe pay more for its own defence? Is it about something bigger around how Trump sees America's role in Europe? I mean, also, could it possibly have anything to do with the personal offence he may have taken from Friedrich Merz's comments?
I mean, it's all of those things. I mean, firstly, the bigger picture. We are coming to terms with a Donald Trump that's taking America to a very different place than we're used to. A far more isolated America, less engaged with the international community, indeed dropping any support for the very international architecture that's actually served the world very well over the last few decades. And this is a little bit of detail that's now coming out of that, of wanting to withdraw support. He's made it very clear. He's felt Europe hasn't spent enough on defense. I think that's actually fair. I would add, though, that anytime America has called for European support or British support over the decades, we've been there. Iraq and Afghanistan clearly are the big examples where we paid a heavy price for our support of being there when it counted. So he cannot criticize us for not standing up when required, but it is right to say we should spend more on defense. But it will reshape NATO. There's no doubt about it. NATO will probably hold an emergency meeting in the next few days to discuss. Ramstein Air Base is one of the biggest air bases America has overseas. To see that closed down would immediately impact the air cover, the NATO's capabilities, and there'll be a lot of infilling as to how other nations can then offer greater support to keep European defense up.
Yeah, Germany, as you say, so central, isn't it, to military logistics across Europe. If those numbers do come down significantly, how much does that affect support for Ukraine?
I think it's significant. Firstly, the type of warfare that's being conducted in Ukraine, as we know, is changing the very character of how we fight. And NATO itself is behind the curve of that. It's wanting to upgrade, update, provide itself as to more legitimacy on the battlefield when we've still got 1990s equipment. So there's that question as well. We saw this when there were those drone incursions into Poland by Russia. We actually had aircraft from Britain being mobilized on the ground to be sent across there. By the time we got there, of course, it was all over. So there's an upgrading that needs to be happened by NATO. By NATO, we were hoping America would participate in that. I think it's a mistake by America. Make it very, very clear. I think this will be said again and again. There will be times of troubles ahead when when America will call on NATO's support. And of course, we're going to be left so busy dealing with Russia that will benefit from this. President Putin must be smiling in the Kremlin right now, delighted to see that the West, that NATO, and indeed Europe is looking so split and divided.
Yeah, it's a big problem that Europe has to wrestle with, isn't it? I mean, Europe talks a lot about standing on its own feet militarily, been quite honest with itself in recent weeks and months in that capacity. The honest question, though, is, I guess, is it ready if Washington steps back now? And if it isn't, how long will it take to get ready?
Well, yes, I mean, that is the big question, because if you were at the adversary and you saw that the top cover, the massive support was being removed, and you wanted to cause any form of harm, you would act pretty quickly. I would say it would take 3 to 5 years for us to fill those gaps and to get us into a better place to look after our own security. That's not to say America wouldn't be there. And certainly if Donald Trump is to be replaced, then there may be a big rethink. But for the moment, you're absolutely right that this is actually benefiting our adversaries. China will be looking at this as well, just saying just how divided the West is as a whole and how dangerous Donald Trump has become, not just to European security, but the global economy as well, with the folly of the Iran war, which again is not looking like it's going to end. The thing about the Iran war is that it sucked in an awful lot of American capability. He's had to bring assets from the Far East. He's had to take assets also from Europe too. And he's burnt through an awful lot of munitions. And much as we hear the War Secretary, Pete Hegseth, and indeed the President saying how almighty, the American firepower actually is, they've diminished their capabilities because they burnt through so many munitions in this costly war, which has costed, I understand, about $2 billion a day.
Tobias, you mentioned already this idea of President Putin smiling at this news. What message does this send to Moscow? And what will the Kremlin be thinking? What will be the calculation being made in response to this news?
I think he will enjoy the fact that time is on his side. Every opportunity we've had to push Russia back, through sanctions and so on, or on the battlefield and so forth, suddenly he's given a reprieve. He's given more time on his hands to rearm, regroup, and then push forward again. And this is another great example. From the very beginning of the war with Ukraine, we've had public debates about whether to send tanks in to support or F-16s and so on. And that's given a wonderful delay, a time period for President Putin to prepare for what's coming over the hill. And now we see this yet again, just at the time, as I say, when he's losing so many, 5 times the battlefield casualties than Ukraine. That is starting to wear thin with the Russian people themselves. And now he can actually justify it and say, no, we've got to keep going because victory is now in our sight. Ukraine will not get the support of America anymore. The Europeans will find it difficult. This is our moment that we're going to be able to claim mission success. So it's really bad news from the European perspective. And as I say, I think the Kremlin will be delighted by where things have gone. And a sadness, really, that we're not standing together. When Europe and America are not on the same page, our adversaries take full advantage of that. That's what history shows.
Tobias, always great to have you with us. Thanks, as always, for your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
OK, after the break, we'll take a look at the latest border talks between Azerbaijan and Armenia and what this technical progress could mean for the wider peace process. Don't go away.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Yaptığınız atışa hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. AnewZ is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. A Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on AnewZ.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Deputy Prime Ministers of Azerbaijan and Armenia met in Armenia for the latest round of border delimitation talks. Well, the sides agreed on draft instructions governing how delimitation will work. Mapping and documentation will also be carried out. These texts will now be submitted to both governments for approval. The meeting also reviewed technical aspects of the process with further talks to be scheduled. Well, joining me now is AnewZ's Nigar Shirinova, who's been tracking the latest border delimitation talks between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Nigar, good to have you in the studio with us.
Thank you so much.
Just walk us through the latest meeting then. Who was there and what was discussed?
Okay, thank you so much for having me. It's very nice to be here again. So the meeting the latest meeting was more about the ongoing war between the two sides, border delimitation commissions of Azerbaijan and Armenia, which is responsible bodies for defining the state border between these two countries. And from Azerbaijani side, the delegation was led by Shahin Mustafayev, who is the chair of this commission in the Border Commission of Azerbaijan, and also he is Deputy Prime Minister of Azerbaijan. And from Armenian side, it was led by Mehir Grigoryan, who is also the Deputy Prime Minister of Armenia. This time the meeting was in Armenia. And I would say that the meeting is technical, importantly technical, but also we can also say that at the same time it's politically significant as well, because as we can see, these are the two high-level bodies from both governments, Deputy Prime Minister from both sides, who came together to speak about defining the border, and this is like mostly technical, but at the same time political as well. And also the purpose of this round, because there were many meetings before as well, this was the 13th round, and the purpose of this round was mostly technical and to advance the framework, practical framework of these negotiations and of this process, we can say. And it means that how the border exactly will be drawn in the map. They are speaking about defining the borders and agreeing on that, on those borders. And importantly, as an important point, I would like to mention that here it's also important that it was between two parties, two sides. It was bilateral between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and which shows us the direct engagement between the two sides, and which is the thing that Azerbaijan was always preferring and supporting, to have the direct engagement without any third parties.
Both parties then deep into that technical work, as you said. What do we know at this stage about what has been agreed?
This is a very nice question, because we can really see the outcomes of this round of negotiations of this commission. Notably, we can say that they agreed on the draft instructions for the delimitation process. So draft instructions were agreed, and we can also say that in the simple terms, they agreed on the rule book, we can say, and this rule book, it includes some steps like analyzing and agreeing on maps and historical documents which will be used for the future process, and also the maps were agreed historical documents which will be used in the delimitation process, and also legal and technical standards which legal and technical standards will guide the process of delimitation, and also how the two sides will coordinate and verify the data agreed. So this is a very important step and outcome of this kind of negotiations, meetings and commission, we can say. So they agreed on this, and now the process will go further.
And in terms of that process, Nigar, what happens next?
So next, we can say mapping and documentation, which is where we can see the concrete steps and concrete results. So they will apply maps and documents, as I said, and those mainly will be the Soviet era maps, because these are the maps which both sides are mainly referring to, and they will agree on technical things which will be agreed from both sides, some geographical.
And I guess this is really important, isn't it? Because when two sides have disagreed so vehemently, not just about situations as they're occurring at that particular time, but also about the chronology and the history, that to get that agreement at this stage could be really powerful.
Yes. And also geographical tools will be agreed. There will be satellite data used as well, and also the expert teams, probably field work will be done from both sides to agree and to coordinate, to verify the data and mapping in that border area. So this is a very important step. From both sides they will be involved, and in the future we can see the real concrete results of this agreed draft in this commission.
And then assuming that draft, those documents, that mapping is all agreed by both parties, what does that then lead to? What happens after that?
I think this is the process which goes further, and we can see the real result there, because after these commissions, now it's approved in the commission level, so from both sides, and now after that we will go through the internal process of respective countries. The commission, they agreed this on their commission level, and now they will go to Baku and Yerevan. And there, most probably, they will go to legal processes, some technical legal reviews, and after that we can see the real approval and coordination between even higher representatives of both countries, the real tangible results of this commission meeting.
Nigar, let's just sort of pull back a little bit. Just give us a sense of how this process fits within the work that's been done so far. Just remind us of what's been achieved so far and the bigger picture of where we're now going.
So it's a not long process, I would say, because it started from 2020 war, Second Karabakh war. Right after that, it's a part of the. It's just 6 years, but actually this is a long and gradual process to achieve this. Now we are achieving this, but it's actually went through many things. And so far there were multiple rounds of these commissions, negotiations and meetings. This one was 13th. Exactly the 13th meeting since 2022. I would like to emphasize that. And also there were meetings in Azerbaijan, in Armenia, in the border area, and there were Moscow meeting, Brussels meeting. So there were many meetings, multiple meetings, and we can see the partial. They agreed on partial delimitation already in certain areas, and that was the area in 2024 May. So that was the area of Gazakh Tavush, and we don't have the map here, but if we imagine the South Caucasus, there is Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. So it started from the north part of it, from Georgia and Azerbaijan line. It goes to the south part, the bottom line. And also it was agreed to. This was in May 2024, so they agreed to return of the 4 villages under control of the Azerbaijan. So these are very important steps, because these are how the bilaterally 2 sides can sit, negotiate and agree on these practical and very important steps for both nations, for both governments. And also we can see the continuation of this process, because in this meeting they already agreed for the next one, which will be in Azerbaijan. So this was in Armenia, and the next one will be in Azerbaijan, which shows the continuity of this process, that this process will continue more and we will see more results, we will see more tangible, real results. And also I think that these border issues are very sensitive and important, and it should be resolved by 2 sides bilaterally, yes, through legal and technical mechanisms, instructions, not with some third parties and political pressure.
Yes, an important point. And Nigar, always great to see you. Thank you as always for your analysis.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, after the break, we'll check in with our correspondents around the globe. Do stay with us.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Yaptığınız atışa hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Welcome back. Now, a draft resolution in the European Parliament focusing on Armenia is drawing concern in Azerbaijan. It comes at a sensitive moment for ongoing peace talks between the 2 countries. Adam Morrow reports from Strasbourg.
I'm standing outside the European Parliament in Strasbourg, where a political signal from Brussels is drawing attention at a particularly sensitive moment for the South Caucasus. At the center of it is a resolution titled Supporting Democratic Resilience in Armenia. While presented as support for democratic institutions ahead of elections, it is also raising concerns in Azerbaijan, where officials and analysts say parts of the document risk sending a broader political message beyond Armenia itself. The text calls for deeper EU-Armenia ties and warns against foreign interference. But it also uses the term Nagorno-Karabakh, calls for the return of ethnic Armenians to Karabakh, and criticizes what it describes as Azerbaijan's detention of Armenian prisoners, language that Baku has long argued lacks balance. All of this is unfolding at a moment that many describe as historically significant. Azerbaijan and Armenia have been locked in decades of conflict over Karabakh, but in recent years the focus has shifted towards normalization, including work on a peace treaty, border delimitation, and the reopening of regional transport routes. Azerbaijani officials say new trade and connectivity links could play a key role in stabilizing the South Caucasus after years of confrontation. The timing is particularly notable. The European Parliament session took place just one day before an Azerbaijani delegation, led by Deputy Prime Minister Shahid Mustafayev, arrived in Armenia for talks, part of ongoing efforts to move the peace process forward. At the same time, Armenia is deepening its engagement with the European Union. Yerevan has been working to expand political, economic, and security ties, while Brussels has increased its involvement through reform support, political dialogue, and regional connectivity initiatives. The first ever EU-Armenia summit in Yerevan on May 4th and 5th is expected to mark another step in that direction. Azerbaijan, meanwhile, remains a key energy partner for Europe, particularly through Caspian gas supplies and transport routes linking Europe and Asia. But relations with EU institutions, especially the European Parliament, have often been strained, especially when it comes to Karabakh-related language that Baku views as one-sided. To better understand how this resolution is being perceived, AnewZ spoke earlier with political analyst Rustaf Taghizad in Baku.
First, language that frames Azerbaijan as an aggressor without mentioning the decades of occupation Azerbaijan subjected Azerbaijani territories. That's not critique, that's historical amnesia. Second, the demands for democratic relations in Armenia only as if only on-site needs fixing. What about democratic resilience in a country that has suffered war, displacement, and mine contamination? Third, calls for sanctions for restrictions on Azerbaijan, while the same institution continues to import energy from other conflict zones without similar security. I think that the line between political critique and institutional bias is crossed when asymmetric becomes systematic. The European Parliament has passed over a dozen resolutions critical of Azerbaijan. How many has it passed critical of Armenia's constitutional claims? And in my opinion, worse still, these resolutions often cite non-governmental sources with proven records of bias against Azerbaijan, treating their claims as a factual.
His comments reflect a broader debate over whether the European Parliament's approach is balanced, and how such messaging is interpreted in the region at a time when both sides say they are working towards peace. Adding another layer to the story are recent allegations involving former International Criminal Court prosecutor Luis Moreno Ocampo. A report by Minval Politica claims Ocampo may have been involved in efforts to shape international pressure on Azerbaijan and influence political dynamics related to Armenia. The outlet cites alleged video material in which Ocampo discusses possible ways to influence European policy, including through contacts linked to EU institutions. According to the report, the alleged campaign may have involved support from Armenian lobbying networks and financial backing from businessmen, including figures based in Russia. It also raises questions about whether discussions extended beyond Azerbaijan to include Armenia's internal political landscape, including pressure surrounding Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. The claims have not been independently verified, and no formal response from Ocampo has been made public so far. However, they contribute to wider questions about lobbying, influence, and competing geopolitical narratives, including the possible role of actors connected to Russia, at a time when regional alignments are shifting. AnewZ has also reached out to political groups within the European Parliament, including PPE, S&D, ECR, Renew, Greens, EFA, and the Left, requesting comments on their support for the resolution and how they assess its potential impact on the peace process. A total of 27 requests for comment were sent. Only one response was received. Member of the European Parliament Marketa Gregorova from the Greens EFA group said she was unable to provide comment or an interview due to a busy schedule. Taken together, these developments highlight just how sensitive this moment is. With active peace talks underway, growing EU engagement in Armenia, and shifting geopolitical dynamics across the region, even carefully worded political statements can carry significant weight. The key question now is whether messaging from Brussels and Strasbourg will reinforce a fragile normalization process or risk complicating it at a time when, for the first time in decades, a lasting agreement appears within reach. From Strasbourg, this is Adam Morrow for AnewZ.
Another major sporting milestone is coming to the South Caucasus after FIFA confirmed that Georgia and Armenia will co-host the FIFA Under-20 World Cup in 2029. For the region, it marks more than football. It's a chance to showcase infrastructure, regional cooperation, and the next generation of global talent. AnewZ correspondent Nini Nikolashvili reports.
In a landmark decision by FIFA Council ahead of the 76th FIFA Congress in Vancouver, it has been officially confirmed that Georgia and Armenia will jointly host the FIFA Under-20 World Cup in 2029. The joint bid, first announced in June 2024 in Yerevan by the presidents of the two countries' football federations, has now successfully secured hosting rights for one of the most prestigious youth tournaments in global football. Held every 2 years since 1977, the competition brings together 24 of the world's best young national teams, often showcasing the future stars of the sport. For Georgia, this is a particularly historic achievement. It will be the first time the country hosts a FIFA world-level tournament since gaining independence, placing it firmly on the international football map. Levan Obiashvili, president of the Georgian Football Federation and a member of the UEFA Executive Committee, described the moment as remarkable, emphasizing both its symbolic and practical importance. He highlighted that the tournament will not only celebrate football but also contribute to the long-term development of the sport in both host countries. While details such as host cities, stadiums and infrastructure plans are yet to be announced, anticipation is already building. With recent experience in hosting international competitions, both nations are expected to deliver a vibrant and memorable tournament. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, AnewZ.
Young voices from across the world are gathering in Baku for a forum tackling some of the long shadows of colonialism and inequality. Well, the event aims to turn debate into action with a focus on how a new generation can shape fairer and more inclusive societies. Aytan Shakarova has more.
Baku is set to host an international youth forum focused on post-colonial challenges and the role of young people in shaping future societies. Ahead of the event, participants have already arrived in the Azerbaijan capital and are taking part in a series of institutional visits. Today they visited Asan Service and the DOST agency, where they are getting acquainted with Azerbaijan's public service delivery and social support systems. The main forum, titled Empowering Youth for a Post-Colonial Future, will take place tomorrow on 1st May. Organized by the Baku Initiative Group, the event will bring together participants from 17 countries, including young diplomats, researchers, civil society representatives and students.
Et ensuite pour le forum,
Ahead of tomorrow's Youth Forum, we are very honored to be here and to take part in this event. We would like to thank the Baku Initiative Group for inviting us, because it is important for our struggle for sovereignty and independence to connect with young people from other countries, particularly from the African continent, who share the same goal of achieving sovereignty and no longer being under Western imperial domination. For us, this is essential. It is also part of our broader Pan-African vision, the unity of African peoples politically, economically, and culturally, as well as in other areas, so that African nations can fully achieve their sovereignty.
It sort of relates back to our message for our goal of portraying as India, that India is also a construct of colonization. That's what our message is, that India is also a construct of colonization, and it's a violent regime that's targeting Sikhs in all aspects, and that's what we're here to highlight for tomorrow's convention.
Topics for discussions will focus on the lasting impacts of colonialism and neocolonialism, from economic inequality and resource explosion to cultural erosion and limited access to education and decision making. The forum aims to strengthen international youth cooperation, promote knowledge exchange, and empower young people to play a more active role in addressing post-colonial challenges and shaping inclusive futures. The event is expected to conclude with the adoption of a final declaration and the creation of a new international youth platform focused on decolonization and global solidarity. Ayten Şükürova, Cavid Aliyev, AnewZ.
The humanitarian impact of the recent war in Iran is drawing international attention as the head of the International Committee of the Red Cross visits Tehran amid growing calls for accountability and aid. Well, the visit comes as Iran pushes for wider diplomatic support and stronger international scrutiny over civilian suffering. AnewZ's Choraj Shirililo brings us more from Tehran.
The president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Mirjana Eshpoliaric, visited Tehran for discussions on the urgent humanitarian concerns following the U.S.-Israel war on Iran, the ICRC office said. She met with Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, Deputy Foreign Minister for Legal Affairs Kazem Garibabadi, and President of the Iranian Red Crescent Society, Pir Hossein Kohlivan, on Wednesday. The ICRC president also visited residential districts and medical centers in the capital Tehran destroyed by the U.S.-Israeli airstrikes. According to official sources, she praised the Iranian Red Crescent for its bravery and expressed deep regret over the loss of lives of citizens and bombing of civilian sites, including schools, hospitals, and residential areas. Foreign Minister Araghchi told the visiting ICRC chief that Iran expects international and humanitarian organizations to fulfill their legal and moral obligations in accordance with the Geneva Conventions of 1949 and condemn the killing of civilians. Also, Deputy Foreign Minister Garibabadi said that the U.S.-Israeli attacks on 130,000 civilian sites are examples of war crime, adding that international community failed to address appropriately these crimes on humanity. Meantime, Foreign Minister Araghchi held phone calls with his Indian, Polish, and Kenyan counterparts, as well as Speaker of Parliament of Lebanon, on bilateral ties and the latest regional developments. He called for a global condemnation of U.S. blockade of Iran's southern ports, saying Washington and Tel Aviv must be held accountable for the security and economic consequences of their actions. Choraj Shirililo from Tehran for AnewZ.
Tashkent is hosting the latest stop of the Emerge Innovation Summit Roadshow as Central Asia pushes to expand its tech and startup ecosystem. With investors, founders, and digital leaders in the room, the focus is on how the region can turn innovation into long-term growth.
Tashkent is hosting the Emerge Innovation Summit Roadshow following its previous stop in Istanbul. The event brings together startups, investors and tech leaders to discuss innovation, investment and digital transformation across Central Asia. Uzbekistan is increasingly positioning itself as a regional hub for technology and investment, particularly in areas such as fintech and e-commerce, although startups in the region still face barriers while scaling up international markets.
So basically speaking, Uzbekistan has made a significant progress for the past 3 years and turned the country from an importer of digital and tech solutions to exporter. And we see huge potential here because of a strong government support, infrastructural projects, a huge human capital and human talent concentration, and of course investments and available VC funds and funds of funds. And we do believe that in the upcoming 2 years we can expect even more progress in Uzbekistani market.
The event also highlighted the shift toward customer-focused digital ecosystems, especially as countries move from cash-based to digital payments.
We have a huge partnership network of million payment terminals, and this is kind of a connection between the cash economy and the digital economy, because people are literally inserting the cash into the digital terminal and at some point adopting the digital experience with the screen. So it works for us. It helps us to leverage on further digital experience through a MON application or Birbank application. So it's the way how we are treating it in an evolutionary way.
The summit addressed the long-term trends with fintech, digital payments and integrated ecosystems expected to drive growth across the region. The event concluded with a startup pitch competition, with winning teams receiving funding opportunities and a chance to present at the main Emerge Summit in Baku on 8 to 9 October 2026. It is Sivil Rajapur reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, AnewZ.
Trade tensions between China and the European Union are sharpening again, this time over Brussels' push to prioritise its homegrown industry. Well, at the centre is Europe's drive for economic resilience and Beijing's warning that protectionism could trigger retaliation. Manor Makdoum has the latest.
China has issued a formal warning to the European Union over its proposed Made in Europe policy, marking a new point of friction in already strained trade relations. Beijing argues that the initiative, which prioritizes locally produced goods in strategic sectors like electric vehicles, green technology, and industrial manufacturing, could unfairly disadvantage Chinese firms operating in the European market. Officials say that such measures risk undermining fair competition and may breach global trade norms. The policy is part of a European push to strengthen domestic industry and reduce reliance on external supply chains, especially those linked to China. In recent years, concerns over economic security, supply chain resilience, and over-dependence on Chinese manufacturing have pushed the European Union to adopt a more protective stance. The plan is expected to shape procurement rules as well as investment conditions, potentially limiting foreign access in key sectors. In response, China has warned that it may take countermeasures if the policy proceeds unchanged, raising the risk of escalation between two of the world's largest economic blocs. Beijing maintains that the move could violate principles set by the World Trade Organization, which governs international trade practices. The initiative shows a deeper shift towards economic competition and strategic decoupling, with both sides increasingly prioritizing domestic resilience over open market integration. Manor Makdoum, AnewZ, Beijing.
Pakistan is opening a new trade route into Central Asia, bypassing long disrupted crossings through Afghanistan and signalling a wider shift in regional connectivity. For Islamabad, it's more than logistics. It's part of a broader effort to secure new markets and reduce economic pressure. Hira Mustafa reports now from Islamabad.
Pakistani officials say the first consignment shipped via the new transit corridor to Central Asia has been successfully cleared, marking a significant step in the country's regional trade ambitions. The shipment, valued at over $60,000 and weighing nearly 24 tons, included a range of goods such as edible oil, tea, herbs, cream, and soap produced by local industrial groups. It was dispatched from Karachi's export processing zone after completing all regulatory clearances and transported through China's Source Dry Port. Authorities say the route opens a critical alternative for Pakistani exporters who are now increasingly using this corridor to send products like rice, oranges and potatoes to Central Asian markets. For years, Pakistan has depended on the Chaman and Torkham crossings to access these landlocked economies via Afghanistan. But those routes have remained closed since October 2025 amid ongoing tensions between Islamabad and Kabul, disrupting trade flows and raising costs for exporters. Industrialists say the new pathway through China not only bypasses these bottlenecks but also aligns with Islamabad's broader push to diversify its trade routes and reduce dependency on a single transit corridor. Analysts say the timing is crucial. With Pakistan's economy under pressure and foreign exchange reserves strained, expanding access to new markets could provide a much-needed boost. They add that strengthening trade links with Central Asian states rich in energy and resources offers long-term strategic and economic benefits, helping Pakistan tap into new demand while enhancing regional connectivity. Hera Mustafa for AnewZ, Islamabad.
Well, that brings us to the end of Primetime. Andy Mioch will be back with you tomorrow with plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at AnewZ, thanks for watching.